you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have a wireless mic, so we're going to have to. I can see. No, I can't stretch this very far. Jeannie, do you think we should have people just make their statements from the audience, or should they?
We could try it.
Okay, let's try that and see how that goes. So please speak as loudly and clearly as possible.
Collect some cards.
And Jeannie, do we have a sign-up sheet for statements?
There's no one on the sign-up sheet, so.
Okay, so let me try. So raise your hand. We're gonna have time for some statements here. So I got here, 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 and here, and there. Okay, let's start with that, and then we will go to our questions. And please, if you don't have a card, raise your hand right now. Jeannie will give you a card, or if you need one picked up, she'll come and get you, or I'll try to come and get you. So why don't we start here and then move to that part of the audience.
My question is, if the Proposition 1A and 1B pass as you so described, how would that act in relationship to any other proposition, say in 2010 or 2012, that simply focuses on the two-thirds budgetary vote, trying to get it down to a simple majority? Would the proposition you are advocating override that?
So normally, people, when it comes to question time, make statements. Now it's come to statement time, you ask the question. That's great. So I'll repeat the question, which was, so what happens if we say, amend the Constitution and get rid of the two-thirds rule in June of 2010, but then in November we start this constitutional constitutional convention process? How will these things interact? I mean, I could take this, or do you want to?
I'll take a quick shot on it. If the initiatives pass, the California Forward-based initiatives, a little more background. California Forward's another good government group out there that's pushing for government reform, and they have a slate of initiatives. The approach that they're taking is to address each problem with the Constitution on an individual basis and run, I guess, a slate of initiatives for 3 years, probably 8, 10 a year, and hopefully at the end of 3 years have fixed all of the problems that we face. So I think that what your question is, how would our Constitutional Convention impact those changes? Legally, I believe if say their first slate of initiatives pass, or some of them pass, and then we go to the Constitutional Convention. The Convention can then go back and review those changes, provided they're in the ambit of Prop 1B. But politically, I think we work with California Forward every day. Bob Hertzberg, who's the chair of California Forward, the former speaker, actually said at a town hall meeting like this not so long ago in San Fernando that he actually likes the idea of a constitutional convention being out there as the bogeyman for his slate of initiatives. If we don't succeed, then you have a convention looming, that's perhaps a little more frightening prospect. We don't think so. We think the people of California will do the right thing on the convention, but it's something that the two processes do work well together.
All right, thanks. So now we'll go to Mr. Ryder over there.
Richard Ryder, San Diego Tax Fighters. I also was the commissioner in 1997 in the California Constitutional Revision Commission. I'm quite familiar with this. When I looked over your slate of people, I found it interesting. You have good diversity, which I'm really pleased to see, but I did want to ask a couple of questions, just yes or no. How many of you are opposed to the repeal of the two-thirds requirement for passing the budget? How many of you, let's be quick, how many of you are opposed to the repeal of the two-thirds requirement for raising taxes? The problem is, you've got
to be clear, we're not speaking necessarily for our organization.
Yeah, well, either way, it doesn't really matter because it comes out the same way. The net result is what happened at USC and what's happening here again today, and you see panelists is in the same position. You've selected people all who want to raise taxes and increase spending. I'm sure it's not listed that way. We want to redo the Constitution. The problem is that you're not allowed a second voice. I contacted Common Cause, was brushed off, they were not interested in any sort of diverse opinion in this matter. I anticipate the next step when you go with your randomly selected group and go in and educate them, it'll be this cabal that ends up doing the educating. And people who don't quite get it, crazies like me, they're not going to make it through the selection process. This is wrong. This should be a panel discussion, not a propaganda session.
All right. Thank you very much for your comment. Just to be clear on the record, when you did send that email, we absolutely invited you to the event, and we tried to make this time available we tried to make this time available for everyone to have those speeches, and also to John Birch Society for Literature.
Conflicting initiatives that have given us a 500 times amended constitution that we like to call it the Winchester Mystery House. It's a very good point, and as you know, it's a standard political tactic to run an initiative counter to one that's already on the ballot to try and confuse voters, and we fully expect that to happen. That we put Prop 1A and Prop 1B on the ballot. So Prop 1A allows the citizens to call for a constitutional convention, and then Prop B would define the parameters of that constitutional convention. We fully expect, it's a democratic process. The gentleman who doesn't like the 2/3 vote being part of the discussion, that perhaps his group would put a competing measure on the ballot saying, well, we like Prop 1A, but we don't like Prop 1B. We're going to put on Prop 1C that says you can't talk about Prop 13, you can't talk about the budget 2/3 vote, you can't talk about raising taxes. We hope through a process like this of town hall meetings across the state to begin a 2-year education process, whereby people, right now Prop 13 is going to be in our Constitutional Convention. As I said, it's a 500-pound gorilla in the room that you cannot ignore when you're talking about reform of governance of California. You just can't. So if you take it off the table, the whole process loses its integrity. It has to be part of the discussion, and whatever the people decide, the people decide.
Point of order.
Sure.
An initiative can only have one purpose.
Yeah.
That's why there has to be 2 initiatives.
Of course, yeah, there's a single issue rule in California as well, which, by the way, doesn't apply to a constitutional convention, which is why California Forward has to run 30 initiatives for a while. We can put all of our reforms in one package to the vote.
Okay, great.
As well, if there's conflict in initiatives,
Stand up.
if there's conflict in initiatives, the initiative that gets even one vote more negates the other one. So it's a simple majority. If you just get, if the 2 initiatives are in conflict with each other, whichever one gets the most votes, even if it's just 1 vote, actually takes precedence over the other one.
Great. All right, and I'd like to remind our questioners that this is your time to make your public statement. So, so we're happy to do this, but so I'll go to this gentleman in the back, this gentleman here, and then to our two statement makers, and then I think we'll go into our questions after those 4.
Okay,
Yes.
yes, I think my statement, not a question, but will be in a little bit in response to the...
Please identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Herb Shore. I'm at the Taxpayers Association. I'm representing the Democratic Socialists of America, San Diego chapter. So you should have from both sides. Yes, many of you know that there's a fellow named Grover Norquist. If you, yes, and the point is, California is Grover Norquist's dream come true. If you want to eliminate government entirely, you first make it, remove its resources to such an extent that it is so small that you can put it in the bathtub and drown it. That was, and that is what has happened in California. To the point that when you say Sacramento, it's kind of something that should be on a late night, Nightline or a comedy show. People, the local news never bother anymore reporting what's going on in Sacramento because it's regarded as a joke. The main elements of that are Prop 13, the 2/3 vote requirement for anything relating to revenue, even term limits. Let me just mention that this gentleman said all elected politicians should read the California Constitution. By the time they would get done, they'd be term limited out. That means it's the inability of Ted Kennedy's to be around long enough, or John McCain's to be around long enough to make state government a functioning institution. So I am in favor of a constitutional convention because California basically has become ungovernable because it doesn't have a functioning state government.
Now there's a gentleman I can have a great debate. That would be much more entertaining.
All right, sir.
I have a question for Xander.
You said your organization.
Please identify yourself.
My name is Bill Crane. Okay. You said your organization, League of Women Voters, was in favor of constitutional reform, if I remember. What does that mean?
Well, I can tell you what it means, actually, I've got it written down here somewhere. Our position in brief is we support measures to secure an orderly and simplified state constitution, provisions that enable the legislature to deal with state problems efficiently, flexibly, and with responsibility clearly fixed, and constitutional guarantee of equal representation of all citizens in the state. When the League adopts a position, it's fairly broad.
Lots of wiggle room.
Absolutely, but it's essentially a statement of our values. And then that's why I'm not actually speaking on any particular thing. I'm speaking about our values, and that's what we think our Constitution should reflect.
Has anyone that's ever tried to craft a mission statement within an organization would know, right? Okay, we have two final comments here, John, and then right beside him.
Yell out.
John, would you like to come up?
I'll just project. Oh. No.
You cannot project.
I really want to acknowledge the research that the area council has gone through, studying other states that are doing this regularly, and maybe even other countries. There's a considerable body of research about citizens' councils and the participation of ordinary people in government around the world. 9/11, Katrina, have been experiments in this country. What I object to a little bit is the concerted effort of these business community that you represent in putting this down and supposedly representing the rest of the population. I think you've got to broaden your base considerably amongst groups like Common Cause, League of Women Voters, New America Foundation, others, before it's believable that what you're putting forth really represents the people of this state.
John, who are you?
He's been priorly identified and part of the Common Cause group and many others.
Tom Fauci.
Great, and our final statement here.
I actually have a question.
Oh,
So, you
go
know,
for it.
All right. My name is Marilyn Riley. I'm a native Californian, old enough to remember when California was wonderful in all ways and to benefit by public education in California. Well, actually, a short comment. Why couldn't you double join all these? Okay, you know what I mean.
Oh, go good. Keep going. Fill it up.
Double join all your initiatives. So the passage of one depends on the passage of all the others, and you can do that with everything that all the groups propose. But then my question is now about the selection. Now, I think you've done a wonderful job, and I'm not the most business-friendly person in the world, but I think you've done a good job. How is it going to work if you go by the jury pool? Are working people going to be able to be protected in their jobs? And what about military people? Is there going to be payment for them?
Yeah, sorry.
So it's just not retired.
Yeah. On a quick technical question, these initiatives cannot be a double join. Double join would say, this only goes into effect if this passes, and it's probably unconstitutional to do that with initiatives. So it would have to be, one group or coalition coming up with their approach and voters giving that more support than any other. On the other question of how to. Okay, great.
Okay, I'm going to take a little liberty and address the gentleman who made the prior comment. We fully understand that if this is a business-led initiative process, that it dies in the cradle. And this cannot be another. We are, as I admitted freely, we are a special interest, and if it's just us, it dies. So the very first people who joined us in this campaign was the Courage Campaign, which is an offshoot of MoveOn.org, a very, very liberal organization that generally doesn't sort of hold hands with the business community, but they were the first to hold hands with us. And Common Cause, League of Women Voters, the Southwest Voter Education Project, the biggest Latino political organization in the country, have joined us. So we certainly broadened our scope beyond the business community and plan to do some more. And then to answer the question about the delegates' pay, the delegates will be paid. How much remains to be seen. One idea was that we would pay them according to the salary levels of current state elected officials, which is something north of $100,000. So that, you know, that would probably not poll particularly well, but we would find a number that would make it that would make it socially acceptable, politically acceptable, that nobody would lose their job. It would be along jury lines, nobody could lose their job for serving. And it would be a 6 to 8 month process in all likelihood. So people would really have to want to serve, and we would have to make it possible for them to.
I just wanted to respond to two competing proposals. In my experience in Los Angeles, we had a commission appointed by the city council, and the mayor's going to participate in every city elected official, the way we talked about one of the methods here. And then the mayor didn't really trust the city council, so he put on the ballot a provision for an elected city council, which was then taken over by Labor and others, and so the mayor won the elected commission, but he lost the candidates. It was a miracle that we actually got a passage of charter reform, and it was because in the end, both commissions decided only a unified charter would pass. And I think the same dynamic will happen here. If there are two competing proposals and people are of good intent on all sides, I think we'll end up with one proposal in the end.
Thanks. And just in the interest of something that we never have at Common Cause meetings, which is age diversity, we have one more question from the gentleman in the back, or a statement.
My name is Gabriel Davis. I believe it's critical that we actually have our demographic represented on the Constitutional Convention, as well as like 18 to 25, or have parameters set between the specific ages, because really, when we think about it, it's like I myself, I want to make sure that my peers, that, you know, our concerns are actually represented, rather than just having some, well, older, but either way, it's like, I do believe in respecting my elders, but also respecting my peers. And so in that sense, I find it's very critical that we make sure all age groups are represented.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to move to the question and answer portion of this, and thank you. So many of you have submitted these. G.D. Brown's going to read them, and if you haven't had a chance to submit one in writing, I can give you a card right now. Put your hand. Oh, I'm sorry, gentlemen. I did call on you earlier, so please take your chance to make a statement. Sorry.
Hi, my name's Jim Obenchain. I'm a retired engineer from General Atomic. I'm also a member of the John Birch Society. And my take on the meeting today is our whole discussion so far presupposes that we need to revise or rewrite the Constitution of California. I would like to propose that maybe the one we've got is okay. It served us well for over 100 years. And perhaps some of these people have other agendas. I think what we need to consider here is that if the one we had worked so well for so long, why do we need another one? The one that we have is not being followed. So what makes you think they're going to follow a new one? The politicians we have are not following the one we already have. So if we write another one, what makes you think they're going to follow that one? That's my only comment.
Thank you.
Actually, I'll respond. WAPA did actually say that we should read the Constitution and apply the Constitution. We didn't say we should change anything. Our first and best recommendation was to read the Constitution that we have in place and actually apply it and make it work. So I take exception to being grouped in that general hodgepodge of people that want to change the Constitution. Thank you.
And please raise your hand if you'd like a question card.
Hey, we had a gentleman over here that had something to say also. Blue shirt, he had his hand up for a long time, nobody called on him.
We'll collect the card and someone
You
should
just
collect
take
the
the bag
card.
after the meeting.
Did you want to make a statement or do you have a question? Statement?
I just wanted to make a statement. My name is Jesse Thomas. I want to say that government is really nothing more than a leviathan leech that lives off of the production of other people.
Please respect it.
Sir Margaret Thatcher did say that socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. So my question is, as we've seen today, because of so-called budget crisis, what are you going to do
All right,
Thank you.
All right.
All right, now I think we're ready for the question. This was addressed to Matt Reagan. Point of clarification, please. I thought you said some issues would not be on the table, and then I heard that all issues would be on the table.
All issues relating to governance would be on the table. We would firewall off all of the social issues, the wedge issues that have absolutely no relation to how we run the state. So we would box those out of the Constitution. But all of the other issues that relate to how we govern, how we raise revenues, how we spend those revenues, would be in the Constitution.
And if I could chime in here on this, I think everybody who's been talking about this agrees with that approach. And the legal consensus is clear that the call of a constitution may limit its subject matter. Where there's legal controversy is whether, once constituted, that convention may unlimit themselves. So there are a handful of court cases from 100 years ago, when we used to do this much more often, that say that once a constitutional convention is called, that they are free to move into other areas. And those have not been overridden in recent years, but they've not been tested in recent years. So this is an area that deserves some serious thought. I mean, there are a lot of divisive issues in California. No one would probably want to see some of the things that happened in our 1878, 1879 Constitution, where the Know Nothing Party was one of the strongest groups in that, and it included prohibition against the employment of any Chinese immigrant, right? In either public or private employment. That was in that Constitution. So there are a lot. This is a concern that may not be, at the end of the day, it may be that the Constitutional Convention does not want to unlimit themselves, and it may be that if they do so, they may be prevented from doing so by the courts. But it's something that I would worry, that I would want a problem with.
Thanks for that clarification. Another question. Why did the Blue Ribbon Task Force fail in the 1990s, and what were the suggestions that they made? Anyone want to address that?
Sure. Sandra, do you want to go in? Okay. The Constitutional, and maybe Richard Ryder would give us some perspective. You were a member of the State Constitutional Revision Commission?
I guess I could be a temporary panelist.
Yeah.
The deal was, to give you a little history of it, the panel was put together by big government Republicans, Pete Wilson. He picked the third of the group, the Democratic State Senate.
Democratic.
Democratic?
Yes.
You prefer that? The liberals picked the others. And so what you had was you had a committee of 22 that was designed that was picked explicitly to repeal Prop 13. That was the goal of it was quite clear. Basically, what happened was the state assembly temporarily changed to Republican. The Republican, I should get his name, fellow who's the mayor of Anaheim. Pringle. Selected 6 people to replace the existing 6 who were all in favor of the same thing. I was one of them. That made it a nonpartisan election. And then we went through the process for a year and a half, and of course the other side won. But as you recall, it takes 2/3 vote to pass this. The legislature was sufficiently balanced at the time that there really wasn't a chance. And again, the whole goal was to repeal the 2/3 vote requirement and allow property taxes to rise at an unlimited level. That was what was proposed. The minority submitted a minority report, which apparently was quite well done. We had a couple of academics work on it, and it was convincing enough that the measures did not go.
Just to be clear about this, so anything that the Constitutional Revision Commission comes up with would then have to go through the legislature and get that 2/3 vote of each house. Or have to get a consensus in the legislature. And the Revision Commission in the early 1990s, none of the proposals went through the legislature. And there are a couple different, so this is one explanation of that. Another explanation is, by the time they got to the legislature, the economy was getting better. We didn't have a budget deficit, and everybody thought government was hunky-dory. And that sort of moment of reform was wasted because it took so long to get there. And then the third read on this is that many of the other proposals were some that were quite innovative. So one included having a unicameral legislature. And this is an idea that academics proposed, but it's more of an ivory tower idea than one that makes sense to many Californians. And so it wasn't. So the idea was that this commission didn't have their eye on public opinion enough, and that was part of that. Yeah, sure.
The work that Richard and his colleagues did back in the mid-90s is sitting in a binder in several offices in Sacramento collecting dust. It was very good work. They came up with some amazing, innovative suggestions for government's reform. It was a panel of the best and brightest that California, Richard included, has to offer. And I'm surprised he doesn't get the irony of this. All of that work died because of the 2/3 vote requirement in the legislature. It's living testament to the fact that that type of minority rule doesn't work.
Thank you. I think a good constitution tells us how to make public decisions. The present constitution tells us what sacred cows are to be protected and funded. How do we get rid of sacred cows and assure a democratic process is followed when we make public decisions?
Well, that's the question now, isn't it?
I'll take the first shot at that. And I explained the process earlier. I think it's a matter of trust. There are divisions in this room, they're quite obvious, and we see perhaps political extremities bearing their teeth. But for the most part, we're in broad agreement that things are broken and things need to be fixed. We all represent one form of special interest or another. If we're beneficiaries of Prop 13, if we're beneficiaries of Prop 42, Prop 98, they're all sacred cows to somebody. But what we need to do is put those on the table. Every single one of them, hold hands, trust in each other as Californians. And this sounds very Pollyannish, and it is in great regard, but it's the only way we get out of this mess, is if we hold hands and jump together.
Right. Yeah, we need to vote. In the last election in San Diego, I think that 30% of the people, I think it was, that are able to vote are actually registered to vote, and only 10% of those voted for the person that's now mayor. So we need to vote. The duty is ours, and we're failing, and I'm failing. Okay, no matter how much I try to do things, if I can't get people to vote that can vote, then I'm not doing what I've been trying to do, and we aren't either. So a lot of the problem lies within us, and pointing fingers, we have 3 others pointing right back at us.
I want to speak to a basic tenet of the League of Women Voters, and that is that we're talking about a constitutional convention that's a large enough body of people who will be getting together, listening, talking, sitting in the same room. It is our belief that when people sit in the same room and talk to each other, that you can hear what the other person says and they can hear what you have to say. You have an opportunity to express yourself. If this is broadly enough drawn, as we're talking about meetings, there is no reason to believe that your particular view is not going to be represented. There is no reason to believe that people are not going to hear something and learn and grow in the process. And that seems to me the best way for us to develop consensus, which is government doesn't work. There's nothing, democracy is only a process. Society works when people believe in it and believe in its legitimacy. When people lose confidence in the capacity of ourselves to govern ourselves, governments fall. There's nothing sacred about government. And this is a way that will engage more Californians than anyone we've talked about so far, representing an opportunity to get together and really, in deference to the young, I don't want to say, in an adult way, to exchange views and listen to each other.
Thank you. All right, I'm trying to get through all these questions. If the jurors have no experience in government, how will they understand the changes they are discussing? There are some things that ordinary folks generally do not grasp that people in government do grasp.
A very good question. As I explained earlier, the Constitutional Convention will probably be a 6 to 8 month process. I would guess that the first 3 months minimum of that process will be an education process. where the delegates will sit in caucus and they'll discuss the various issues. They will have subpoena authority. They will be able to subpoena members like Richard, who worked on previous reform efforts. They'll be able to subpoena constitutional experts, policy experts. They'll be able to subpoena legislators, former governors. And I don't even think that the subpoena authority will be necessary. These folks will come forward and volunteer to come to the convention and have a broad-based discussion on for several months on all of the issues from every perspective. It won't be gamed by Common Cause or the League, as Richard claims. This will be a broad, open discussion that every Californian can watch on their C-SPAN or their public access channel and see how the thing is progressing. It'll be a very open process, unlike the initiative process that we currently have, where someone with deep pockets, and I'll pick on T. Boone Pickens, for example, who came out last year they spent $20 million trying to get a solar farm approved by the state government and get himself a big tax break, and then all of a sudden gas prices go from $4 to $2.50, and I'm not interested in solar anymore, and it's gone. But had we passed that, he would have picked our pockets. T. Boone Pickens. But that's how we govern these days, through the initiative process. It's a 2-week, some guy with a lot of money spends it and buys our vote. With the constitutional convention process, it'll be an open dialogue with the people for many, many months. Everybody will be in the papers every day. This is what they're discussing today. This is what this panel is discussing. This is what some of the ideas that they're kicking around. You'll read about it. The people will gradually, over time, become educated, buy into the process. They'll watch it like a soap opera, and it'll be reality TV at its finest. And when the slate of reforms comes to the vote in 2012, we are fully confident that the people will have a full grasp of what's before them and do the right thing. And that goes both for the voters and for the people who participate in the convention. Because they're not going to do something crazy and put forward a slate of initiatives that they know the voters will never go for. They're not going to waste 6 months of their lives doing something stupid.
Does it need 2/3 then?
No, it's a 50% vote. 50%.
Yeah, on that topic about who's qualified to contribute, everybody is.
Stand up.
Everybody is. I grew up in South Texas, pitching watermelons and hoeing peanuts. And then I was able, after getting out of the military and working for the government, to go to university. And I went for 10 years. I have like 400 credits. But that doesn't make me any better or worse than anybody else. And it doesn't make any one of you any better or worse than anybody else. And so the reality is that each of us can contribute if we try to contribute. And the qualifier of past public experience, well, at the 2007 ASA, I went to one of the board meetings, and this lady stopped me at the door of this exclusively Northern European board meeting and said, "Oh, you can't come in here." And I said, "Well, why not?" She goes, "Oh, you have to be invited." I said, "Well, how do you get invited?" "Oh, you have to be, somebody that they invite." So that's the thing. Without the next day, because I made a stink of it, I said, "Well, it's really amazing that this is kind of a narrowly defined group, and this is the American Sociological Association." The next day, when I went to a board meeting, they said, "Oh, come on in. We agree with diversity. We support that idea." Because they had, I guess, had a chance to talk about it. So each of us has the same ability to contribute positively to this growing process as anybody else. Thanks.
Thank you. When the recommendations of the convention are submitted to the people's vote, does it have to be submitted as a whole or as several aspects or individual provisions?
It can go to the voters as one package of initiatives, or that the convention can decide to split them into different buckets of reform. As it was explained earlier, there's a single issue rule for initiatives in California. It doesn't apply to the outcomes of a constitutional convention. So it can go, whatever the convention decides, they can have tax reforms on one slate, they can have election reforms in another, they can have state governance issues in another, or they can do it all.
Sure. And I think this is a key potential advantage of the Constitutional Convention approach. So it can do either way. And in fact, most state constitutional conventions, so if they rewrite an entire constitution, as we did in 1879, they put it before all the voters all in one package. when we had the more modern constitutional conventions in the 1960s and 70s and 4 in the 80s, what they almost exclusively did was they put up many different initiatives. So in Hawaii, I think they put up 12, and in Illinois, I think they put up 33 individual initiatives, and these either all fail or all pass. Basically, voters sort of see them as one big package, and they all fail and one pass. And I think this is key, because I don't think we can do this with just narrow majorities in favor of something that just a little bit more than half of California likes. So if you put up an initiative right now to get rid of the 2/3 rule, I think it would fail in California. It would fail in 2004, and I don't think it would be the right thing to do to just push through this initiative without it being balanced by something that would guarantee that the other 49% of Californians have their voice heard and can have a chance to make positive policy in California. And what either a revision commission or a constitutional convention, one of its advantages is it could package reforms and make deals that would get a broad consensus rather than just that narrow majoritarian victory.
Okay, it says, if you are using voter registration rules to recruit the people for the Constitutional Convention, you exclude a large portion of citizens. How will this issue be addressed? Also, how will non-citizens be included in the convention?
I'll be very brief. We would include voter registration and DMV records. That's, I guess, the language we've looked at. As for non-citizens, I believe, and I may be wrong, but that'll correct me, I'm sure, that the current constitution, I would say, I'm almost sure would prohibit non-citizens from participating.
I don't think the current constitution would do this, right? So the call of a constitutional convention, right, would have a lot of authority on this, and there's very little, so our U.S. Constitution doesn't even bar non-citizens from voting. States can make that decision on a state-by-state basis, and many states, in fact about 18 states in the 1800s, allowed non-citizens who were legal residents to vote. So I'm not sure that there would be that would necessarily be unconstitutional to open this up to people who are either not, clearly it would be fine to open up to non-registered voters, but even non-citizens, as some local governments allow them to vote in local elections, probably be permissible.
Yeah, and as for the question about voter rolls, the option is always there to register. This isn't an exclusion like you're wrong race, wrong gender, wrong whatever.
You want to be governor? One more?
Another way that this can be overcome, or at least in part, is actually to survey the populations, all the populations. When we went to digital crossover in television, I surveyed as many people in Southeast San Diego as I could, and I found out that just as some 40% of the people in that area do not have access to high-speed internet in their homes, about 40% of those surveyed only did maybe 200 people, so it's not very scientific. I guess margin error is maybe 23% or something. But also did not have access to TV anymore, at least not English TV, because the only stations that are still getting are in Spanish, because they didn't they're still analog. So we lost from television broadcasting and news dissemination some 40% of our population, and it's not even being discussed. So we can reach out to the populations that are not registered and encourage them to at least participate by interviewing them and try to represent them. Thanks.
Okay. How would California pay for a constitutional convention, and who would staff it?
The cost of a constitutional convention, if you look at other states, we would guess would be somewhere in the $25 to $30 million bracket. And everybody goes, ooh, that's expensive. If you look at the last budget that we went through, that was how many months late, for every day that our state budget is late, it costs the state $40 million. A constitutional convention would cost $30 million. If we fix that one problem, we're way ahead of the game. So, it's a potential criticism. Oh, they're going to spend $30 million to sit in a hotel and discuss governance for 6 months. But the end benefits far outweigh the potential criticism.
And the staffing?
Oh, the staffing. Good question. you know, the staff would be, I would assume, would be a largely neutral body. It's not a body that has any authority over the convention. You know, they bring drinks. I don't know that documents that the convention requests. I don't know that staff has actually has any real authority over the running of the convention.
I mean, I think staff often set the agenda for many of these discussions. They have to figure out, well, who are you going to invite to address the convention? What's going to be the order of those speakers? You know, all of those decisions are going to be quite important. One of the ideas that's being kicked around is sort of having a hybrid of some broadly represented, appointed cross-section of people to basically, in some ways, staff the convention. To be a commission that would help sort of set the agenda for what the convention delegates would look at, and then having those appointed, randomly selected convention delegates be doing the actual deliberation and making the final decisions. So, I mean, I think it's important to think about all the people who are going to be in that room, and staff are a key link to that.
Okay, have each of the panel members considered the unintended consequences of your goals of government growth?
I would like to make the first statement that there's only one law in politics, the law of unintended consequences. No, but the answer, I think the answer is we know where we are right now, which is not working. Dissatisfaction, people being very seriously hurt by the consequences of all of that. We either take a step to move forward not knowing what the end is going to be, or we just pull the blanket over our head and sit there and wait for something else to happen.
We currently govern by initiative in California. Our legislature is pretty much a toothless, hamstrung body that has only authority over, I guess, 7% of the current budget. So we govern by single initiatives every time we go to the ballot box, and these initiatives, more often than not, have a slew of unintended consequences, and they definitely run counter to current sections of our Constitution. We mandate spending in initiatives, but we don't mandate any associated revenue or cost saving with those spending ideas. I'll use, say, 3 strikes and you're out as an example. That's a great idea. Everybody loves it. Let's pass that. Fill up our prisons. Where's the money for the prisons? Well, we'll take it from local government. Everything has a knock-on effect and an unintended consequence. Through a constitutional convention, we would look at all of the flaws in our government system from a holistic, systematic approach, and hopefully limit them. There will be unintended consequences. Nothing's perfect, but limit those unintended consequences through a thoughtful process rather than single rifle shot approaches to development.
Change is, I guess, I don't know who wrote it, but change is the only constant. You know, we're not still functioning under the laws of Hammurabi, okay? We're not still functioning under the Santa Claus, okay? We are changing. We're still not operating under the Magna Carta. So we continue to evolve. That's what human societies do. And we can hope for the best. And that's the best I know.
One other comment that I heard at one of the Bay Area's first big conference in Sacramento. Don't waste a crisis. This is an opportunity, and that's why we keep moving ahead. There is no final right answer in democracy or any other form of government. There is what we can do, and we keep moving forward.
Okay, could electoral reform include changing voting equipment? And if so, how can we be sure people have the knowledge technically to decide this?
I would hope not. Because election equipment is going to change. It's changed enormously. It's an ongoing process. It's a technology. That is something that should not be in the Constitution. It is something that we should hold government responsible for making sure it works. But that's a responsibility that you give to government, not the particular machine or lack thereof.
Let's see. A couple more. Would speakers of other languages be included as part of the Constitutional Convention Committee, providing they read the book on the Constitutional Convention, or on the Constitution in their native languages.
Provided they meet all of the constitutional requirements, I don't see why not. But getting back to the citizen, you probably picked up in my accent. I'm a naturalized citizen myself. I'm from Ireland, and part of the citizenship test is an ability to read English and take the test in English to some degree. So, if citizenship is a requirement of the Constitutional Convention, then there would have to be some basic English language skill applied. But I wouldn't see that anybody would be barred from a constitutional convention, provided we're mandated by the current constitution for the delegates to be demographically and geographically representative of the state. So there will be folks from different demographic and racial backgrounds in the room. And if they need language assistance and language skill help with translation, it'll be provided.
All right, I think we, let's see, I don't see any more questions. Yes.
I keep thinking as I'm sitting here, looking when we were back in Philadelphia, and we saw the building in which the delegates who wrote the Constitution of the United States met. It was a very hot summer, and they had to keep the blinds totally closed because there was so much controversy going on where the discussion was taking place that if it had gotten outside, they might never have gotten the Constitution. So, we can do it.
Muriel?
Stand up.
Miriam Raftery, East County Magazine, and I was wondering who would be educating these delegates? You're a business group. Would there be, for example, interests from labor or environmental organizations also included in deciding what education we should get about changing the way we make our laws?
I would be very surprised if my organization had any participation and role in selecting who educates the convention. As I explained earlier, our sole goal in this whole effort is to create a process that's as transparent and tamper-proof as possible. If we can tamper it, someone else can tamper it, and we don't want that. So I would assume that maybe the Cal State University system would provide experts, the UC system would provide experts, our current legislative body would provide experts, former legislators would provide experts, the League, Common Cause, all of the New America Foundation, all of the good government bodies would provide expertise to help educate. And taxpayers associations, because that's a representative organization in the state that has a legitimate point of view to come speak as well.
I wanted to explain our action, and then we'll thank all our panelists. There are three bills that the legislature is talking about right now in Sacramento. Senator Mark DeSalmier has SCR 3 that calls for a constitutional convention. Assembly member Felipe Fuentes is sponsoring ACR 84, which calls for a constitutional revision committee. And a third one is Assembly member Sam Blakesley has sponsored AB4, and it sets the qualifications for delegates to a constitutional convention. So those are three things that you can look up, or if you would like, we have postcards here, and if you want to write something to one of these members, you can do that. We've got, or to your own representative, to support something like this or not support something like this, whatever your feeling is. But we like people to go away from our Common Cause meetings with more than just learning more, but what can I do about this?
A constitutional convention and what it would consist of. But there are probably a lot of people here would like a follow-up meeting on this that's much more intensive as to what would actually take place there and who would be possibly qualified amongst us and other people to
Quick show of
You should
hands, how
consider
many
that.
people would be interested in attending something like that?
All right, all right. And then maybe we can, because we'll have enough time, Mr. Ryder didn't contact us. We'd already had the flyers out and everything.